Good evening, everyone. It's Tom Sidney Bushnell, aka Numbers, here from Psych.Club from the Tom Numbers Show. News with Tom Numbers on top of your game. And I've got a gentleman that's always at the top of his game, Gene DECODE. Gene, welcome back to the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you, Tom. Nice to be back. Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Our pleasure. It's always a pleasure to have you back on the show, sir. So thank you. And well, before we get into the meat of the show, how can people find you, Gene? What's the best way for people to locate you online?
Yeah, so on social media, Truth Social and Telegram, I'm Real Gene DECODE on Rumble as well. And I have a website which has a paid site that I actually have two websites. So I have the genedecode.org that has a 7-month for the deep dives. It has a surface area with quite a bit of content there, as well as similar content to what's on the Rumble. And then also the Blessed for Service website is a free website. So the Real Gene DECODE, the paid part, is $7 a month or $77 a year. I do a Q&A about every single month. I did one last night, usually about 2.5 hours. Plus, there's many live events, usually 2 to 4 live events a week in there. For the Blessed for Service team is doing like decoding truth and scripture, story time with Stephanie, journaling with Stephanie, European wine break. It's a chat for the European group, the U.S. community chat. And then I do many of the decodes. I do an after chat Zoom. When we have a series done, like we'll be wrapping up the Deva Kingdom in a few weeks, and I'll have an after chat Zoom on that. I have an after chat Zoom on the story times to go through the morals of the story times. So there's a lot of content on that, and you can look at it. You can't access it, but you can look around and see the different decodes. We just did Titanic Part 1. Titanic Part 2 is coming up. There'll be an after chat Zoom on that one. And we've got Grand Canyon, tons of information on the Grand Canyon, and all kinds of different things on Ukraine and Hollow Earth and Expanding Earth, and just, I mean, many decodes on there. And we're continuing to add and increase them all the time. So thank you, Tom.
Brilliant. Well, everyone, the links will be below, so go and sign up to Gene's material because he's a wealth of knowledge, as you know. So thank you, Gene. There's a few things I wanted to discuss with you today, Gene, and we're going to put it on YouTube, so we'll keep it as clean as we can, but as descriptive as we can. And one thing that happened here in London, it was on the April 24th. And there were two black horses. Sorry, one black horse and one white horse, for want of a better description. And the white horse they said had been injured, and you saw blood down his neck or her neck, and under the body. But they were both galloping through London, apparently for 6 miles, and there was a lot of codes on it. And I did the codes on, what was it? A bloodied white horse came to 251, which came to April 24th, 251, I believe, if I remember rightly. I did it about a week or so ago. And this conjured up a lot of people. It did with me when I saw it. A lot of people thought, oh, this could be, reference to the scriptures and biblical prophecy with the apocalypse and the 4 horses, a black horse, a white horse, a pale horse, and I can't remember the other type of horse. But there's 4 horses there. There was only 2 in this, but apparently there was originally 5, but the 2 that caught the attention, and they were galloping through the streets of London. London is 74 Gematria, 74 is Jesus, 74 Messiah, 74 Muhammad, 74 Jewish, 74. There was just a lot of symbology. It appeared in kind of modern day our lives. It caught everyone's attention that afternoon when it happened. And I wondered if you'd been able to notice that, and if you had any thoughts on that in terms of if that was some biblical prophecy coming to pass. Can you hear us, Gene?
Oh, sorry, I'm talking to myself. Okay, try again. And behold, as one probably knows the scripture, and I
Yeah,
looked
read it out again for us. Yeah, read it out for us. Sure.
yeah, and I looked, and behold, a pale horse, and the one sitting on it, the name of him was Death, and Hades was following with him, and authority was given to him, to them over the. This is important, and authority was given to them over the fourth of the earth to kill with sword and with famine and plague and the beasts of the earth. And this, to me, of course, that's in England, so it's signaling to me the like you've had your prime minister say that they're going to put your economy on a wartime footing, and the European Union is saying the same thing. Most of the countries there, NATO, that they're having to go up against Russia, which is they're threatening China. You can't. The U.S. is funded on uh, the mustached man's birthday on Saturday, uh, bills to steal money, 5 billion starting in the U.S. Of course, that means 300 billion of Russian assets. The Russians have Putin has turned around and started doing that from J.P. Morgan in Russia with several oligarchs. It's already starting. They're the sword rattling, and then of course Blinken went to China and was greeted by essentially nobody of any value and was seen off by, I think, the U.S. ambassador to China. It's like pathetic. And he threatened China, if you keep helping Russia and Ukraine, we're going to sanction you. And oh, yeah. And then the Shanghai minister, Shanghai, not China, said, you do that, we'll sanction you. Just Shanghai sanctions the U.S. We're toast. So they're saber rattling. That's what the horses mean. They do not control the world. Many, many countries, the United States, the Five Eyes, the NATO, the EU, do not control the world. Most of it's under control of the BRICS nations, which includes India. It's the majority of the population of Earth. Saudi Arabia, Russia, China, and a whole bunch more. And now many countries, even in Africa, are starting to be backed. They're building a nuclear power plant for Burkina Faso, so they can, yeah. And, many countries like the guy running who is, a coup government, but he's probably going to get elected, is looking around at Niger. This is Chad. He's looking around at Niger and all the countries around him and goes, no U.S., no Europe, no French, no French, no French. French being gotten out of that one. One of these things is like Sesame Street, is not like the other. All of these countries do not have foreign influence anymore, right? So we want our country and our, like Niger said to France, hightail it, because they're backed by what is called, I can't remember, Africa Corps? Yeah, Africa Corps, which was previously in Ukraine as, led by the person who they said blew himself up in an airplane with the hand grenades. Poroshenko, I think is the correct name, if I'm remembering right. And so they're now running the Africa situation. They're saying, oh, so you need France and your this part, this town, this area cleared. Okay. And they clear it. So they're seeing they're backed by Russia and China. And, I forget the name of the country, but I think it was Chad. I don't remember. Sorry, a small African country turned out to have oil. So the Chinese built them a pipeline, and they're shipping 20,000 barrels a day. So this is a change in, so this 1/4 of the world is what the cabal, the deep state, actually controls. They had controlled Russia when it was Soviet Union. Then they kicked out the bankers and got rid of communism, got a Christian-based government where Putin is very, very, deep Orthodox Christian. And so you're looking at there's prophecies saying that Russia will rescue the world and it'll come down through Ukraine and all that. Exactly what we see. And so we see this, pale horse being death, being the plagues, what we already had, famine, which they've been doing, sword, of course, military might, like they're doing in Ukraine, continuing to fund that, like they're doing in Gaza, continuing to fund that and bomb the Jeers. They're saying they're going into Rafah now, where they said they could go and retreat from the other part of Gaza, and now they're going to be bombing them there. The International Criminal Court is, saying they're going to, arrest and take in charge Netanyahu and the Israel regime, like Smokovich and Ben-Gvir, who are nothing. They're not Hebrew. They're not Jewish. They're Zionists, which are not the same thing. Zionists are Satanists. And so that's the Khazarian Mafia. And that is death. And we see it as death. They are saying from the river to the sea, all of that will be Israel. They are saying death. Christ did not say that Israel was a physical location on earth. It's a place, a heavenly place. It's a place within peace. It's the peace of Christ. If you're not in the peace of Christ, you will not go through positive ascension to join Christ in the heavens. That's in the scripture. So those that are not in peace, that are in continuous, like they're now saying with Ukraine, we'll fund you for the next 10 years and make it precedent-proof, $88 billion a year. That's the spirit of war, not the spirit of peace. You do not have peace in your heart, mind, spirit, body, and soul. So that means all you're about is war forever, the war machine, a war economy like your prime minister is saying he's going to put, who he wasn't even voted in. He was placed in.
Yeah,
Little Richie Schumacher I forgot who coined that term, but it's out. And so, we look at these different symbols that they're doing. I think that horse had wash off red paint, but
yeah, it didn't. It looked kind of movie-ish to me. Yeah, it didn't look like natural blood, but it was, yeah. You joked as well. You did the Sesame Street analogy, which I loved, and then you said prior to that, Mr. Mustache. Who's that? You mentioned Mr. Mustache in your description. Who's that?
The guy that ran Germany during World War II. I don't know if I post this on YouTube, so I'm trying not.
I got you. Okay, I got you. Yeah.
I'm trying not to say the name, so it'll get you banned.
I appreciate it. Yeah. Looks like Mr. Mean
say from anybody's names as much as possible.
Yeah, it looks like Mr. Mean from the Mr. Men books, like a kind of green sausage with a moustache and yeah, got it. I got it.
Yeah. So go ahead.
And prior to that, I sent you some things that came to my attention a couple of weeks ago, and you asked for a couple of links and had a look into it. So there was, people would have seen this, or probably some people would have seen this because it was doing the rounds for a day or two, that the day after the eclipse, which was this year, amazing, we're now at the beginning of May, but the eclipse happened on the 8th of April, and it seems 3 weeks ago, but there's such a lot that's happened since then. It could have been a lifetime ago. But anyway, nevertheless, on April 9th, the day after, there was imagery shown around, doing all the rounds on Twitter and everything else amongst the community, of a large black shape on a satellite image, and it was moving up, apparently from Antarctica and going along, making its way up the Atlantic along the African coast, and it was about maybe the size of India. Maybe it was large. It wasn't insignificant in its size, and then it would kind of flash off, and then it would come back on again, and it seemed to be doing this over a number of days. And so I asked yourself about that, and I sent the imagery to you on the website that it could be looked at. I know the people were putting things out saying, "Oh no, it's just a blink on that. It's just a glitch on that system. Other satellite imagery is not showing it. It's just this one." But it kept reoccurring over 2 or 3 days at least, and it seemed like a big glitch if it was the case. So I was interested what you found on that, if there was anything significant to it. Was it a glitch or was it something else?
Yeah, that was actually, and the buoys in the area were saying 80 feet high wave displacement. Of course, that wasn't the case. If you had that coming up and hitting the southwestern side of Africa, I mean, it would have been devastating. It went from Antarctica, essentially the base 211 New Schwabenland area, up to there, and then it went away. And what that was is, if people will recall, there were three, at the destruction of Tiamat, three pre-Adamite ships came from Tiamat and Mars to Earth, and they crash landed. They didn't land well in Antarctica, which was ice-free at the time, to set up a boat and rule over the Earth at that time. But then later they caused a world flood happened, and it caused a wave to go across all of Antarctica, and it flash froze. They threw up ice into the atmosphere, and it flash froze. The whole upper part of the world, known as the Arctic region, and the upper parts of North America and Europe. And then it also did the same thing in the southern part of the world, which would be Antarctica. It flash froze 1 mile deep ice, and those ships were buried. So the building of New Schwabenland, or base 211, they found one of the ships buried under the ice. When they took their submarines to find the entrance to the Earth, the hollow Earth, the Antarctica entrance, they also found a huge cavern that is made by geothermal activity. There's much geothermal activity in Antarctica. In fact, around the pole itself, it's ice-free, and it's got plants and everything growing year-round because of the amount of on-ground activity, geothermal activity. It keeps it ice-free. And then there's areas that are ice-free all the way to the coastline. So, the ice wall theory is totally not possible, because if you sail around the entire circumference of Antarctica, there's areas where you can walk up on rock all the way to the pole, to the South Pole. We'll just call it what people know it. It's not correct, but we'll call what people know it the South Pole. It's not an ice wall. And in that, when they took their submarines to, building base 211 with the huge submarines that could put semis in them, and they found this huge ship. So there were Draco presence already there. They had a contract with the Dracos to help them build the Hanabu and the Bell was the first thing they built, and then they did the Hanabu and various other Dark Fleet ships. And they found those ships, and they've been, most of the elite of the Alpha Draco have left the Earth a long time ago. And they left behind only one queen to rule the lower classes, which is in Israel, underneath Israel, the queen. And then the lower classes are just, kind of the hybrids that they look at as like scum, and then the lower, the gray, the kind of gray servants they have, the little gray guys, and then they have a whole bunch of kind of browns and greenish browns and things like that they don't look, because they're a very class-oriented society. It's where India actually got that idea. So this lower group is realizing their time on Earth is coming up. They're being wiped out in the dumbs and the tunnels and everywhere. They need to leave. So what they did is they scavenged together the parts from all three, kind of like what United States did with getting going to an auction in, I think it was Kazakhstan, and they bought a whole bunch of MiG-31s, and they're scavenging them together to build enough so that they could send a few to Ukraine of these MiG-31s, which, then you don't have to teach the pilots to speak English because those are, Russian planes. Those were originally Soviet. So they're same thing with these craft. They scavenged enough to get one of the big, huge motherships active and able to leave Earth. So they brought it through the ice because they are just like a TR-3 or any of your stealth craft. When they phase shift and become radar invisible, they can further phase shift and become completely invisible, and slightly more, they can actually, like Tucker Carlson said, crash at like 50, 60, 100 Mach into the ocean and make no wave. Go right through solid rock, right through the Appalachians or the Himalayas or the Rocky Mountains. They can fly through solid rock, no problem. They can fly through the ocean, no problem. I don't know if you call it flying. They're moving using anti-gravitic technologies like the Hanabus that they gave the Russians. The NAZIs during World War II. They used the same kind of craft, the Dark Fleet, the same kind of drive system. And so this huge mothership is what was seen. It was the displacement energetically. It showed as a wave, but it's an energetic wave. It's not water itself. So they were taking this mothership to go off-world and leave the Earth, to open up, following a ley line, so that it could open up a portal and leave Earth, because you can't just leave and fly off into space because you'll be taken down. The Alliance would destroy them. They have to open up a portal, and they did that off the southern west coast where Africa bends in there, where that suddenly disappeared. That huge amount of displacement suddenly disappeared. That was its last seen place, because that's where they opened up the portal and disappeared. Recently, there was a video I saw on YouTube or I guess it was sent to me, Ariel posted it, of a jet aircraft being a whole bunch of TR-3s zipping around it, and they opened up a portal, and the jet aircraft and the TR-3s in a flash of light were gone. So it's the same technology that you see in that. Ariel posted it on X. That same exact technology that we saw that the kids opened up in the mall in Florida, and creatures came through that one too. So these portals, if you have your timing and your frequencies right, you can open up a portal and just leave. You don't have to go off planet. You go to the Earth on another dimension, density, timeline, or something like that. In this case, they went to another Earth on another timeline. They went to the Armageddon Earth.
So that black mark on the radar that I showed you, was that a portal then, or was that just fooey? What do you think?
A huge black circle, kind of. It looked like the shape of a cockroach, actually, to me.
It did. Yeah, it did.
That's the mothership itself.
Okay. Wow. So that mothership has gone now.
Yes, it's gone. Along with all the that's a huge ship. Like you said, the size of India. How many beings that are 12 feet tall? That's an average Draco lower class. And the females would be 8 to 10 feet tall. How many could you put on a ship the size of India? All of them.
Yeah.
All that's left on Earth. You could. I'm not saying they all left, but I'm saying if they wanted to be in there, there's room, along with all their other contingents of little gray servants and all that other stuff. All of that could have left, because they're fighting like now you see in Ukraine. The world is admitting, the Western world's admitting, the 61 billion isn't going to cut it. That's going to provide, they're getting no Patriot systems from the US, none, because there's none to be had. They have to build them. We've given everything we can give. Many of the European countries gave all they have. We've saved some so we can defend ourselves. But the majority of European countries, and they're scavenging the world. They're going to auctions and buying MiG-31s that are junk to scavenge together to send to, I mean, even in Ukraine, they're bringing in artillery pieces, and they're taking pipes that were from the ground as the barrels that are the right diameter for the ammunition they have. Oh my gosh, your battle is done. I mean, yeah, the Ukrainian people are fighting, the forces in Joseph Yar are fighting tooth and nail. It's beyond comprehension. They're fighting again, and they're sending these artillery pieces. You can see welded patches on the barrels. I'm like, not me. I'll do like the various groups that refused orders and say, no, just put me in prison. I'm not going to go. So you have the 25th Airborne, which is a very fanatical group that said no. You've got the 67th Mechanized, which is a Banderite. You know, the 25th Airborne was Azov. The 67th Mechanized is Banderite, and they're fanatics beyond belief. And then you have the 3rd Assault, Brigade, and they're in ACI Brigade too. So you have these very powerful groups saying no, but in the meantime, you've got groups still in there fighting tooth and nail because they're believing they're holding their country. It's, they had a treaty, really, really good treaty in Turkey. And Boris Johnson, again, UK steps in, and he comes to town, and now all that's gone, and they want to go back to that now. Well, those days are long gone. You've lost the majority of the Donbass, the Western world and Ukraine. You're not going to get back Crimea. They keep saying they're going to bomb the bridge. They're going to bomb the bridge. There was a huge drone attack in the last 48 hours. They're not hitting it. It's just because they're getting the same technology now. The rest of the world is sharing technology that is so far advanced of the U.S. and Western world technology. It's like bows and arrows against missiles in comparison. You're talking, the Iran shot a whole bunch of drones and hit everything they wanted to hit through the Iron Dome in Israel. They hit all the targets and all of the things they wanted to hit that were responsible for hitting the Iranian embassy in Damascus in Syria. They hit everything. And then Iran retaliated and launched on the major cities of Iran. And they didn't hit a single thing. Everything was taken down, missiles and drones, before they hit any. They were taken down in an area where it's not going to damage anything in the middle of nowhere, or desert or something like that. That's an incredible air coverage system. Well, they've given that and shared that with Russia and China and all Israel, and all these countries that are in BRICS are getting all of that technology. They now have hypersonic missiles. The Zircon goes Mach 10, over Mach 10. That means if they launch from the Black Sea and they see it going over Odessa, it's 30 seconds before it hits Ukraine, 100 kilometers away. I mean, holy smoke. And that's not the fastest. Iran has, and they have shared this, a hypersonic missile that's like ballistic missiles that fall from space speed. It's going Mach 27. How it doesn't melt is a mystery to me. I don't know, what is it built out of? Element 135 that Phil Schneider showed that can take that kind of heat? But Mach 27, that means if a Beret-class nuclear missile submarine off the coast or in the harbor of San Francisco launched on New York or Washington, D.C., you don't have 1 minute until it's across the entire U.S. and has hit it. They see it launch out of San Francisco harbor, this Beret-class submarine. You don't even have 1 minute before D.C.'s gone. You have no time to take that thing. And what's going to hit that? It's like they're saying a Patriot took down one of these hypersonic missiles. Yeah, right. You're going to hit a speeding bullet with a bow and arrow. Yeah. If you're some amazing samurai, you might do that one time. You're not going to continuously do that. So the Alpha Draco and the various contingents saw, this is hopeless. We control 1/4 of the world. We came here to rule the world, this world, and harvest it for us. And they've been harvesting. We see all of the homeless people. When G went to San Francisco, where'd they go? They're all gone. Where did they take them? Where did they go? They're not to be seen. They were harvested. Same thing we see with people disappearing in national parks and all these chimeras and things they're letting out because they have nothing left. They are up against the wall. They're throwing absolutely everything at us, and they're just saying all of the quiet parts out loud. We can't win Ukraine. Oh, it's just an incredible investment. You know, it's not about saving Ukraine. It's just not about saving the Ukrainian government or the Ukrainian people. It's battle to the last Ukrainian. It's about a continuous war forever to make money for the elites, for the high class, they call themselves, the Olympians. So it's just the Khazarians doing what they do. And they're all going down, and they don't know what to do about it anymore. They're doing their best to take down social media, and take down free media. So they passed in Senate on the same day, that Saturday of the mustache man's birthday, an extension to the FISA bill that allows the U.S. government to spy on Americans. So what freedom, without a warrant, so what freedom do you have? You can't post on certain things like a meme on Hillary and you go to prison. You can't protest. In other words, no freedom of assembly. You don't have freedom of press. You don't have freedom of speech. What freedoms do you think you have? You have no freedom. You're born into slavery. Your birth certificate is a deed and a title, and it has a straw man that's traded on the blue chip stock market at way more value than any other currency anybody knows on earth. If you look at your bond, based on your social security number in the US or whatever your number is in whatever country you're in, you are traded on the blue chip stock market, not the common market. They took over the blue chip stock market and moved it into the private sector for the club, so to speak, the elites again. And so we're talking, the common market is for us, the common people. We're common, so common they can do anything they want with us because as common as the dirt below your feet. That's how they look at us, dirt below your feet. So that's where we are. And the Alpha Draco didn't come here for that. So they're left. The majority of them left. There may be some that think they can, or that weren't even worthy enough because you have, just like in India, the untouchables that are left behind, and the one queen, they'll always leave that one behind to rule if there's a contingent here at all. So that's about what's left.
Will the queen go eventually? That one under Israel?
I don't see Ukraine being able to last to the end of the summer. I'd be surprised if it lasts to the middle of the summer because they don't have arms and weapons and people to fight anymore. They're saying, the embassies are saying they're cutting off their people all over Europe. They can't renew their passports or any of that. They have no ability to go to an embassy and do anything. They're trying to get them to come back to Ukraine, and then they'll send them to the meat grinder to be blown to pieces. So you're fighting a war with a adversary that is so technologically beyond them that we're sending them weapons that are supposed to be, you can see your adversary, sniper weapons, in other words. And the Russians are standing off much further away, you can't see them, and bombarding the bejeebers out of them until there's nothing left. And then they come up through the tunnels. They have the tunnel maps, and they take out the tunnels, and they come up underneath Chasiv Yar, because Chasiv Yar was part of the purpose was to bomb the Donbass and create fatalities, and they've said that part out loud too. The war that started, Blinken even said it. This war started in 2014. It's been going since 2014. When did Putin go in? Certainly not in 2014. They said he did, but he did not. He went in 2 years ago because they've been killing Russian people in the Donbass since 2014. And how did the militias of the Donbass get people and weaponry? By people who were Russian speaking in Ukraine that defected to that site because they said, I am Russian and I'm not going to do this. The same thing we see ongoing because they are, a large part of them speak native language, both Ukrainian and Russian, like Zelensky. His original language is Russian. That's why when he went to China, they translated to Russian out of politeness to him. Because his first language is not Ukrainian. He speaks it poorly. If you're having a meeting and you want the person to understand well what you're saying, you translate it to the language they speak best, which in his case is Russian, because the Ukrainian people are Slavic. And it wasn't Ukraine until Stalin separated it all out. And he's the one that drew those borders in place and put it in place the way that it was before this conflict, the special military operation started, along with Crimea. And then, of course, the mustache man came in there and all of that stuff. Same old, same old. There's nothing changed here. It's exactly the same thing.
Wow. You mentioned Ariel, and you might have seen this post, Gene, about maybe somewhere between the last 5 and 6 weeks, he put a post out about, he was alluding to the time when, well, in the Q post, it talks about the 10 days of darkness. We don't know exactly what that will be, but he was saying that when, the military come out, it's not to be messed with because there'll be certain things going on. And he was alluding to the fact that maybe things like the cryptids or cryptoids that you mentioned, and he mentions, and maybe other things. I'm wondering if that will be a point where they keep the people indoors, they're revealing truth, but the military are doing these last kind of operations to clean everything out and squeeze the last of them out. Like you said, we had that big ship, the size of India, that went just a couple of weeks ago. But if there's still some remnants, I'm wondering if that's maybe part of the operation when that happens. Yeah.
Yeah. So I've actually seen ongoing ops with clearing cryptids. I was driving up in the mountains of a road that I've probably driven 1,000 times over 50 some years.
Yeah.
It has very little shoulder, and it was at night, and I had to get routed. They detoured you around, way down the side of the mountain, around and back up and around. I'm like, because they were doing shoulder work, and it's wintertime. It's Christmas, New Year's time, frozen ground. Shoulder work? What'd you do? Have an avalanche? So I know that area. Then when I came back, it was open. And the ice and the snow, there's not dirt in it from shoulder work. The pavement is the same it's always been for the last 15 years since the last time they repaved it. There's nothing different at all. And when they flagged me around when I was going up, the flagmen and the construction workers, I know what construction workers look like, and I know what U.S. Special Forces look like. They're not the same. They don't look the same kind of people. A lot of your flagmen and construction workers are taller, thinner kind of people. A lot of times they use women as the flag people. These are, the people flagging me around. I go, those are Special Forces, for crying out loud. It was really obvious. And so I got to where I was going, and then I was talking and checking in, and they know the area. And I go, oh, so do you have military Special Forces in town lately? Oh, how'd you know that? It's just, how'd I know that? Yeah. You go, you're very observant, aren't you? Well, they left earlier today. Yeah, they're doing road work. I don't think they do road work. Yeah, me too. And he looked at me and he laughed. I was like, yeah, he figured out what I was asking, what he realized I drove up there from, and I got routed and I put it all together. Yeah, so he had put it together too, because he lives up there. And it's kind of obvious. You see people, it's a small town. Everybody knows everybody. Even the construction crews. If you have a construction crew and road work takes forever, It takes ages and ages. You know, they're in town. Everybody knows them. They go to the bars. They go to the shopping centers. They go all the places. You know, everybody knows. How you doing, Hey, Mac, how you doing? So these are not the type. You know, the special forces come in. They're there for what they're there for. Maybe pushing it a week, possibly two. He said, I go, when they come in? He goes, yesterday. And I asked him how long they're going to stay the night. They said, just one night. And they're gone. So now they're doing their work tonight, I guess, and maybe they'll stay one night when they're done. So we kept the rooms open. They said keep them open for a couple of days. So there you go. That's how they move. They don't sit there and take forever to do something. They do their job. They come in. They're a group that comes in. I know my first martial arts instructor was a Navy SEAL. They come in, they do their thing, and they're out of there.
Yeah. I saw during 2020, in the height of, all the activities then, I was living in London back then, and I heard, sorry, not heard, I was coming up my street, just at the top of Regent's, Baker Street. The Sherlock Holmes Museum is just around the corner. The Beatles memorabilia place. It's about 150 yards away. Go around the corner. There's this pub called the Volunteer, which is interesting. The analogy of the volunteers coming to Earth. But you go around the corner. Regent's Park is just on the side, and I was coming back home, and I saw these two, probably Range Rovers, pretty well modern vehicles, blackened out and black, and I saw two guys in the front, and they were parked, and then the other one just behind it, and they had their engines on, and it was like quite. I think it was a quite a hot evening, and it's like, well, we'd like to kind of just open the windows, in the house, and don't really want a few yards away an exhaust coming into the flat for a long period of time. So I just politely just asked them, how long they'd be there. And I asked the first guys, and they kind of they had kind of a sheepish look upon their face, but they looked quite well-to-do. They weren't like thuggish or anything. And then before I could really even finish the conversation, a guy stepped out from behind in the other vehicle, and he was like dressed to the nines. He looked a bit like, I only saw him for a few seconds, and he looked a bit like David, the YouTuber who was at Mar-a-Lago recently with Baron Trump, and he looked kind of like him. He was very trim, he was styled, probably younger than him, but this guy looked really fit, and he had like an earpiece, and he just said, "Don't worry, step aside, sir." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then he spoke to the guy that I'd spoken to. There were two in the other car, and I just carried on my way and went indoors, and then they did whatever they did. And it looked like to me it was a secret arrest of some description, because it was really, he wasn't just a policeman in a uniform or anything. He was really high level. And then again, a week or two later, maybe a few days later, same thing in the same position. And I realized who they were, so I just carried on walking, and they did whatever they did. But that was the only time I saw any kind of evidence of, for want of a better phrase, special operations going on in plain sight. If I hadn't have just, interjected to the people that were being pulled over, I'd have had no idea what it was, because it was so stealth. They're just two vehicles parked there, but because they had the engines on, that's what led to my attention, because I just didn't want it coming into the nearby flat. And but the guy that popped out was super efficient, super quick, knew exactly what he was doing, and I just was like, okay, I'll just carry on, I won't interrupt. And that was it. It was in and out, super precise, super efficient, almost stealth, really. No one else had any idea what was going on, but I kind of stumbled across it because it was right outside my door, really. In and out, very precise, very efficient. You talked about the technology that can go through water and through rocks, and I saw out on the coast So I see ships. I do see lights and things moving around in the sky. I saw one just about 10 days ago. What day was it on? 19th of April. Sometimes I don't see them for a few months, but I'll see, then I'll see a bunch of them, in the same night, and they move around, lights, and then they flash on and off, or maybe there's a few of them, they change directions, and no blinking red lights at the back, just this steady, constant, movement across the sky. But I saw what I thought was one in the water, in the sea, quite a few months ago now. I caught it just a flicker. I was like, it looked like kind of a maybe triangular in shape, but it was just there for like half a second, and then it dipped below the ocean. And this was in the daytime. And in that same area, ships are always there. So I say always there, not all the time, but they were there very frequently. And yesterday they were there a lot. So we had helicopters, we had large ships, I'm not a ship expert, but they were large, and they were almost doing loop-de-loops, not very big, maybe a mile or two across, and then they'd turn. I could see them with the binoculars. They'd turn and they'd come back round, and then they would be there at night, lit up. Because you get the ferries going around the corner of the headland, so they're back and forth between the harbour here and going to the Channel Islands or France. But ones that just stick in the ocean. But yesterday there was two of them, and they were doing loops, and there was a lot of helicopter activity. But it's in the same area that I saw what I thought was some kind of sea craft that went straight into the ocean and just disappeared. And that was in the daytime, maybe 4 or 5 months ago, which was unusual because I didn't know what it was, But when you said about these things that can travel through water and rocks, and I was like, I believe that, because I've seen something that I can't tell what it was, but it was there for a split second, and it looked like a craft of some description, then completely under the ocean and didn't come back up. So, some of my basic observations to maybe some of the things that are going on, Gene.
Yeah, it's like the semis with two ICBMs on the back of it in 1990s drive into the side of a solid rock steel doors in Alimano crater. It's the same kind of phase shifting technology. So those technologies have been in total hands of the cabal, and now also the Alliance has them since the 80s. The cabal had them in the 40s, and the NAZIs had them in the 30s. And now the Alliance has had them, I think, since 87. So these high-end technologies, we're sitting here flying around in craft that are essentially aluminum cans at 650 or something. They used to have the Concorde, and they scrapped that because they don't want us going 70,000 feet up. They want people to believe the Earth is flat. And if you look from a flat Concorde window, as watching an interview of a couple, and the guy had been a Concorde pilot, said, no, it was pretty darn round from up high like that. And they go, well, the guy goes, and this is what I mean. You can't. People that have their mind closed cannot hear it. He told the guy, well, that's because that's what you wanted to see. It doesn't matter what you tell people. It's why, Tucker with these craft has said, he knows we have them, and it scares him, and he doesn't want to know anymore. And it's what you saw on the boards before, on the Q boards, where they said that there are 3 to 8% of people who will not go there. It is too terrifying for them. That's what Tucker essentially said. It's too terrifying. They don't want to know. They're not going to know. And they just want to go along and do what they've always done and not be involved in the big changes and the shakeup of everything they know. You will have to re-educate yourself like I did. You'll have to redo your version of the history of the world, physics, mathematics, every scientific endeavor.
Everything,
yeah. Everything they've ever told you, the very best they've done is give you a piece of it in truth, and the rest is either not given to you or twisted and turned upside down or inside up, or both.
Wow. There was something I remember from a show we did maybe a couple of shows back a few months ago, and I mentioned towards the end, I talked about Transformers, the film Transformers, and if I've done the numbers, if I remember rightly, Optimus Prime I think is 174, Real Donald Trump 174, the Quantum Leap 174. But you said that you talked about how, and we didn't really go into it because we were coming right to the end, but you said how that is another timeline. So in terms of because that's it, I asked the question, is the reality of Transformers, like vehicles being able to have consciousness, being sentient beings, being able to change form, are they real and here on the Earth? And you said at the time that that's another timeline that they're on. I wonder if we might be able to explore that for a few minutes, because it's a fascinating movie series, and I loved the toys growing up and the cartoon, etc. And there's a reason that they're letting us know about this, but it's fascinating. If they're on another timeline, it'd be lovely to talk about that for a few minutes.
Well, what they're trying to do is to get enough people aware, focused on something, to be able to bring the timelines together. That's how they truncated Tartaria onto this one. You have to have enough commonality between the lines to be able to truncate one into the other. So
Right.
they're trying to bring through the movie genre of Hollywood the Terminator series, for example, or the Transformer series, or these other worlds, these other Earths, like they showed in the series Sliders, all these different Earths where, for example, Kennedy was never killed, or Lincoln was never killed, or dinosaurs didn't go extinct, or the way it really should be, a red light means go. Like you wave a red flag in front of a bull, it charges, it doesn't stop.
Right.
And a green light means stop, because that's food and you stop to eat the food. For a bull, it goes green, food, yum. Yeah, so they reverse colors to cross-wire your brain. And then they give you long-range preconditioning of ideas, thoughts, and information so they can create the timeline mergings that they want. Like they've been constantly trying to get this timeline merged into the Armageddon timeline. There are whole groups of people now choosing to believe that. The only thing is the book of Revelation, and that's what the horse, back to the horse again. They're trying to say there's only that. No, God, then what is choice about? You don't have choice. Everything's predetermined, then you wind up being a Satanist at that point. Do as thou wilt, because you don't have a choice. Anything you do, you were destined to do. So you don't have a choice. God does not work. Maybe theirs does, and it's not a God. But the God of all creation, you always have at least two choices. You actually have an infinite number of choices. So we talked about the rope before of how timelines work. So, these threads of each individual on a timeline add to the rope of that timeline. If you basically resonate with that timeline, but if you can create enough, you will be on that timeline. If you can create enough people within a rope, each person being a fiber in the rope, resonating with a different timeline, you can move the entire rope and it becomes part of this other rope or this other timeline manifold, which would be the Armageddon line. And so that's what they've been trying to do forever. That's what they have tried to make the human race believe. And, they've written things in and they've taken things out so that they don't see choice in the Bible. They don't see, the compassion and the absolute laws of God like choice. That choice is the most absolute law of God, that everybody has a choice to do or to not do certain things. And your choices are essentially darn near infinite. That you can literally choose to be on an earth with dinosaurs still running around that are still in preserves to keep them from going extinct. You can, all of the different possibilities are out there, where there's two main sentient species visible and known to the human race besides the human race. So there's three sentient species on Earth. There's all of these various possibilities where people realize things they don't on this Earth. And what they're trying to get is narrowing that box of perception down to their box of perception only. So they teach you how to speak your language very precisely, spell your words, spell as in a
Yeah.
yeah, it has power. And when you get a child trained in that, just by rote, it's automatic. People don't even think about it. You just automatically, people go, well, what difference does it make if we think that the North Pole's the South Pole, and it really isn't, and the South Pole's the North Pole, and it really isn't? Because now you have electricity. You don't understand electromagnetism. When you don't understand electromagnetism, now you can build an electromagnetic system where you dump 87% of your power to ground. All your electric motors, everything in your house, everything you're using is dumping 87% of the power to ground. It's just like taxes. They take 87% of everything you make away. They dump it into wars forever. They dump it into the ground. And so if we were to become efficient with understanding of things, that efficiency goes into everything. You understand electromagnetism, you understand the earth, you understand the history, you understand the timelines. It starts going across the scale to everything. You understand how the language came about. Like if we look at the term flat, the earth is flat. In the Bible, it comes from the Hebrew chub, which means a flat sphere. A flat sphere. In other words, the surface of the spherical area is very smooth and flat. If you take the finest bearings that we can make that are used in the gimbal assemblies of atomic missiles, like they carry in the nuclear submarines, the SSBNs. So you take one of those missiles that's responsible, the gearing is, and the gimbal assembly and all of that, the ball bearings and all that have to be extremely accurate, at least. They're so perfectly round and smooth, the best we can do. Blow it up to the size of the earth now. The earth is smoother. It's rounder. It's more level. It's a level surface in an arc. It's smooth and round and level, as in not flat, but level in the curvature. It's like in calculus. You take time to zero in your traversing of a distance in an arc, and you can make it level. And so it's saying, is this a constant curve that's by the function of the curve not vary? Is this curve a level, smooth curve? It's saying it's level and smooth. The earth is level and smooth. That's what chub means. It's a smooth, level earth. It's not a flat earth. Just like calculus, they took a NASA document saying this, this and this and this. It's saying that it's in 6 dimensions, up, down, forward, back, right, left. It's leveling it. Yeah, calculus does that. It levels the curve. That's what because you've got a craft going or a missile going Mach 10. You better be able to level it as the missile's steering, because it's going over a curved surface that's curving. It's going so fast, it's going to stay 10 feet above the ground and go over missiles. The missile's going to go over other missiles, other weaponry, buildings around them, over them, mountains, all of this at 10 feet. It better be able to navigate and level that out. That's what calculus is for. It's making it level. It's making the missile stay at a level, 10 feet. That's its level. It's staying at a level altitude. The same with jet aircraft. They are constantly adjusting as they're moving because they're having to reconnoiter the curvature. So they're staying in a level above the ground. It's level. You're keeping the jet level, the same distance from the surface of the earth. It's level. It doesn't mean it's flying in a straight line, as we, common people would see a straight line going straight out. It's what Einstein said. 2 parallel lines going out into the universe will eventually, as they come back towards you, will meet because of the curvature of space. 2 parallel lines will actually come together. It's not understanding the physics and the curvature of space-time itself. People don't understand how God works, how creation works, because you've been dumbed down and put in a box that's so tiny. The perception of 2 eyes compared to 3, the third eye that's seeing ultraviolet and infrared. You don't see that. Bumblebees see it. That's how they get to the pollen in a flower. There's a landing pattern on the flower. If you look at a flower in ultraviolet light, you can see literally a ticker like you see on a runway for an airplane coming in, where the runway is. Here's where the pollen is. Follow this light if you're seeing an ultraviolet light. We were given that ability. That's why in Matthew 6:22-23 it says, if thine eye be single, what eye is single in your head? The pineal gland. And what do we know comes from the pineal gland? I mean, everything, and the coding, and that reacts to incoming light coming in through the forehead, which is the only bone that if you hold it up to light, you take the bone out of a skull, a dead person's skull, you can have a shining light through it, and it'll look like, kind of like it's shining through a honeycomb, 6-sided little pinpoint holes coming through it. You can take any other bone the same thickness in your body or shave it down to that thickness. You don't see that. The reason is it allows for light, ultraviolet and infrared, which can go through the brain material to the pineal if it's not calcified with fluorides. And so all of these things they are doing is to keep us in a box, to keep you so you don't see. You get a child's pineal gland by pumping fluorides and all of that stuff into them. They can no longer see things like Deva. They can no longer see things like all of the chimeras and all of these creatures that can shapeshift or that can interdimensionally shift. So the Yeti, they can use their vocal cords to open portals to go interdimensional. You could too, if you could see, and you could learn to use your vocal cords without limitation. It's all of these things. I've learned to whistle to where it goes hypersonic, so my dogs can hear me miles and miles and miles away. And their ears go back, and the humans going, "What are you doing?" They're looking at me. I'm whistling ultrasonic, and I train myself to hear to 32,000 hertz over many, many years of my naval career. I carefully protected my hearing. If it was loud, I wore the muffs you wear on a shooting range with earplugs in, both. So I have really, really good hearing because we were created to be that way. Protect your hearing, protect your health, don't pump fluorides, all of these things. And it's not woo-woo. It's actually how God made us. But, all of that is now in the process of falling away, all of the boxes, and that's what they're trying to stop, to merge the timelines so they can say it's Transformers or, Terminator, or collapse them all into the Armageddon line.
Wow, pineal gland. That makes a lot of sense. My pineal gland.
So if you want to locate the pineal, it's very simple. You go to the glabella, which is right between your eyebrows, the center between your eyebrows, that spot. The Hindus put it too high. They put it way up high. It's directly, right between your eyebrows. And you go straight to the first vertebrae coming out underneath your skull. Go with your other arm.
Yeah.
You see, it's essentially at the same level. If your head's level, it's at level. And then from the top of the very tops of both ears, and what you've done is you've drawn a complete perfect cross in the middle of your head. And in that middle of that cross is your pineal. It's at the center of your head. Then if you go to where your soft spot was when you're born, to your perineum between your legs, you now have a 3-dimensional cross. It's representation of Christ, the gift of Christ, the seeing and the knowledge and the compassion and the unity with the Holy Spirit on the cross of Christ, which is to be attached to the light of the Holy Spirit. That's why Matthew 6:22, if it's open, you will fill with light within. That's the light of the Holy Spirit coming into from the pineal. And it actually has rods and cones that are connected by nerves to the visual cortex of the brain. It is an eye. It's just a different size and shape, which means the size, shape, volume of a cavity is what frequency it resonates and what the focal links are. So the focal links are different than the visual eyes, the two eyes in the front of your head, which means it sees a different set of frequencies.
Pineal gland. Wow.
Yeah, there's even 4 glands in the human brain they've taken out from Gray's Anatomy in 1811. If you get into Gray's Anatomy, the older than that, you can find them. But there's 4 glands they don't want people to know that are in the brain, which is the oophorum, the paroophorum, the orchic, or 3. The oophorum, the paroophorum, and the orchic. And so they have very special purposes. It's why if a woman gets ovarian cancer, they don't call it ovarian, they call it orphic. Because the orphic gland is what resonates. Once the ovum has an egg that's been fertilized, it will resonate that egg and start it to divide. So it's what's responsible for the light of the Holy Spirit to go from the pineal to the child, to bring in the light of the Holy Spirit, that they see the egg flash with light at the moment of life, it's starting to divide. When they see it's gotten the imprint of the genetic material of the male energy, however that's done, then it'll have that flash of light. It's the orchid gland that does that. If the orchid gland does not do that, when the woman menstruates, she'll have lumps and clots. And that's actually a self-abortion. She did not want the child, and so she did not send that sound out. And that sound did not start it to develop and to divide.
Wow.
Life is not coming about the way they tell you. It has to do with the Holy Trinity. 3 glands in the human brain that they remove because they don't want you to know the secret of life. That the Holy Spirit, the light of the Holy Spirit, the compassion of Christ, and the Father, the Word, all has to come into that. They're just saying it's one thing. Same with nuclear weaponry. They're saying supercritical mass, that's it. Nope, you have to have coincidence and concurrence. Everything when you're creating something or unleashing all of the energy of something, you have to have all 3 energies to combine to make that so. So you cannot get a nuclear blast with just supercritical mass. You have to have coincidence and concurrence. Why they build nuclear power plants where they do. So they are not on ley lines. So you cannot have a nuclear blast off of a ley line. Major cities usually are built on ley lines because they want to be able to blow them up. They actually do know this for eons. Because what happened to Sodom and Gomorrah? What do you think that actually was? What happened to Sahara Desert? It used to be a tropical rainforest. Where did it go? What happened to the Gobi? It used to be a tropical rainforest. Where did it go? What happened there? Something massive happened. A flash of light and bam! No, nothing left. Gone. So there's technologies and how those work that we've been lied to pretty seriously. We think it's just this one thing. It's never, it has to be in God's sacred geometry. Whatever it is, it's either 3, 7, 12, certain numbers. As you know, numbers are very, very important and powerful, and God works on a set of numbers and a proportion of the 5 proportion that's absolute. Nothing's done off of that. And the cabal knows it, and they use it. They use it all the time. That's why they do things on the days and times they do. why they came into special session on Saturday. They don't go to work on Saturday normally because they need the timing. Everything's about timing, and everything's about the geometry and the numbers. So thank you, Tom.
Wow, thank you, Gene. That was amazing. That was really amazing. Grey's Anatomy, what date did you say prior to that so we could look at that version?
1811. It's going to be hard for people to find, but if someone does, I'd be, I'll buy it from you.
And the three glands, so the ones that I know you mentioned it, but just so in summary, the three that they've taken out are what they called again? The
orchic, like orchid, orca, orchic, pareufrum, and euphrem.
Orchid, that's like Orko from He-Man. He was the magical character. Okay.
Now they're always doing that stuff.
Yeah. And then you said about
they'll tell you the first Grey's Anatomy was published in 1858. That's not true.
Right. And then you said about the ley lines. So they do or they don't create nuclear facilities on ley lines, or they do? Which one was it? They don't. Okay.
That's why Chernobyl, Fukushima did not go into a nuclear blast. They hit supercritical mass. Why didn't they go? You see a mushroom cloud.
So if it was on a ley line, it would be complete annihilation then.
Correct.
Okay. Wow.
Like you saw in Tunguska in 1903, the Tunguska blast.
Where's Tunguska? Where's that?
Russia.
You said the pineal gland. So pineal is 57, which is magician, which is human, Tesla. Gland is 38, which is change, which is death, which is gold, which is ocean, which is balance, which is fire. If you add that together, 95, which is Tuesday, which is the date of the election this year.
I got the date slightly off. 30 June 1908, Tunguska. It's Tunguska River in Yeniseysk, Governorate, Russia. I don't speak Russian. Anyway, that area.
Thank you. And if you do talked about the pineal gland, but if you do third eye, so third eye is 94, which is Ace of Spades, which is John, which is November, which is also pineapple. And so the whole thing of, they've been placing the pineapple, think of the pine cone in plain sight. Wimbledon's got the pineapple, and a lot of royal regal things have got the pineapple. And but yeah, pineapple or a third eye, pineal gland, 95 plus 94. Yeah. Well, Gene, it's been really fascinating. Thank you. There's a lot of great information there for everyone. So your links will be below, and who knows where we'll be on this timeline when we speak next. So I'm excited to see what's coming, and I'm sure it'll be memorable. So God bless you. Thank you, Gene. Thanks for all you do. Speak to you again, sir, and your links will be below. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Tom. God bless.
Thanks, Gene. Take care. Bye-bye.